When you think of crises, you may think of catastrophic events like COVID or economic recessions. But today, we're going to talk about a crisis which is happening right now in front of us, all over the world. It forms the very basis of most spatial and social inequality that occurs in our cities. Cars. We have a very large reliance on cars as a mode of transport, or as it's now coined, car dependency. Car dependency, to put it simply, refers to the high degree of car use, but it's not as broad as that may seem. Car dependency is an addiction, and like most addictions, it starts with use, but manifests when non use creates negative influences on one's well being. Think of it like smoking a cigarette. You start smoking once, and then time after time, you keep doing it until you cannot stop. But unlike smoking, this addiction is seemingly handed to us on a silver platter, lit for us and shoved in our mouths. The direction that society has taken in building cities makes car dependency almost inevitable rather than a choice. And not having access to a car in today's world is almost a liability rather than a road towards a more sustainable lifestyle. The UN reports from 2014 of some cities show that Sydney had upwards of 73% of daily urban trips being made by car. Not that cars don't have a place in society either. They are crucial to the daily function of many cities. However, it's our over-reliance on them, when they could be more equitable and sustainable options, is the true crisis at hand. Private motor vehicle ownership started to come about in the 1950s and 70s after the boom of housing and its movement away from public transit corridors, mostly because, with the focus more on cars, care towards public transport development couldn't keep up. As time went on, this issue got worse and worse, with the population only increasing more and more. The prominence of urban sprawl and car-centric developments grew, being the main real-world example of how car-centric design has influenced the world.
But what are the other direct negatives of this crisis? Are cars really that bad?
At the surface level, there are some pretty simple ones such as emissions. Transport as a whole, whether it be trucks, cars, planes, etc., produced 22% of Australia's CO2 emissions in 2024, being Australia's third largest source behind energy and resources. While we could move to things like electric vehicles, this is just one extra problem caused by cars. The crisis itself is the fact that we need to provide an equitable alternative to cars and eliminate a society where they pave the structure. The main benefit we can get from shifting away from car dependency is social sustainability and equity. Urban sprawl goes hand in hand with cars, which then brings all of the social issues alongside it. The farther away from the city, the more you'll notice suburbs built around cars. The main things you'll notice are a lack of public services and shops, a lack of comprehensive public transport, as well as less green space and tree cover. As housing farther away from the city is a lot cheaper, many families on the lower socioeconomic spectrum will be forced to live in these areas. In these areas, they'll experience something known as transit poverty, where they are pretty much forced to drive. And owning a car is far from cheap, with general annual costs exceeding $12,000. This crisis exacerbates the already growing economic inequality, disadvantaging people even more by giving them uneven access to opportunities. Removing car dependency and promoting walkability also helps strive towards more livable cities, with concepts such as the 20-minute city or transit oriented development, where homes are instead built around easy access to public transport and services, providing an equitable experience for a diverse community. The high degree of car use in modern society can also explain the declining interactions that humans are having with nature. Authors Masashi Soga and Kevin J. Gaston wrote an article on the concept known as extinction of experience, which, in a nutshell, claims that the declining human to nature interactions is partly due to a decline in pro environmental attitudes and behavior. Such attitudes can also explain society's increased car dependency. Thus, walkability and green spaces seem like an afterthought, leading to the creation of suburbs that are not very attractive places. So, as a consequence, people are likely to choose driving over walking, which detaches people from their local environment, creating a feedback loop. The way that our new suburbs are designed has become the new normal, and while many people that know that we can do better, the simple truth is that we aren't, and that is a consequence of the current political system we have adopted.
The city of Melbourne, as we know it today, was once famously known across the world as Marvellous Melbourne, with its many grand Victorian buildings, some of which still stand today, but the vast majority were demolished and replaced after the city hosted the 1956 Summer Olympics, in which there was a sense of shame afterwards that Melbourne had not progressed like the rest of the world had in terms of infrastructure and technology. The rise of the American dream pushed many people towards buying cars and moving out into the suburbs. The United States' booming economy during this era inspired many countries, including Australia, to adopt a similar urban design model, with the outlook of the country's future master plans were now heavily leaning into car-centric infrastructure. Melbourne's urban fabric was especially reshaped through the implementation of the 1969 Melbourne Transportation Plan, which was described by J.M. Thomson as clearly a highway plan, not as it is called a comprehensive transport plan, and by historian Graham Davison as the most expansive and expensive freeway experiment in Australian history. Fast forward to today, many of the freeways that were constructed by our governments were sold off to Transurban, a company that operates most, if not all, the toll roads in Australia, including some in North America and Canada as well. From 2022, they boasted a profit of $92 million from toll road revenue and have continued to increase toll road prices since. They have also influenced developers to favor toll roads rather than public roads in designing newer suburbs, ensuring that people who live in the urban fringes have no choice but to use the toll roads to get themselves to work. With few reliable transport options, commute times get longer, and car manufacturers keep adding on new features to make those hours behind the wheel more bearable, deepening our reliance on cars. We have sped the integration of new technology into our lives without really thinking about where it's taking us. Fortunately, the 2008 film WALL-E illustrates this future where technology dictates our lives rather than serving them. In the film, the spaceship Axiom serves as the primary world for humanity in the distant future, where people live entirely within a manufactured environment with big bright advertisements everywhere from by and large. Humans are confined to live in hover chairs since birth. They serve as the primary means of transportation and have many built-in features to fulfill every conceivable need. All this convenience practically eliminated any competition against by and large, and since there was no other company competing, this made every resident dependent on their hover chairs for everyday life. Like WALL-E, many cities today are facing a similar crisis of autonomy, where many people's lifestyles are simply unlivable without a car.
To reinforce sustainability and equity, we can start by replacing individualized modes of transport with social ones. Replacing a few lanes of traffic with cycle lanes, bus routes, and trams, which connect key destinations, will be a good start towards ensuring equal opportunity. Higher density forms will allow more people to be within reach of these options. And above providing the bare minimum, the quality, reliability, and frequency of the social transit services should be high enough to attract ridership from different social groups and different journey purposes. These services should be owned and operated for the public good, not by a private company. While there will always be people who prefer to drive in private automobiles,
but ultimately at the same time I've got to get places quickly.
But other MPs cycle.
Well, good on them. I choose not to. I choose to drive a car and get where I need to go quickly because my time's important.
Later.
the very opportunity to transport ourselves without the need for a car can do so much in making our cities livable for people by reducing noise, pollution, and individualism. But these options merely address transportation by reutilizing the existing paradigm in a more social way. To truly tackle the extinction of experience, we could seek a more ambitious, paradigm-shifting set of reforms. In the Melbourne CBD, streets make up 80% of open space. So why not envision the street as a public space rather than just a transport utility? The street itself could become a destination where people meet and gather with shade, coverage, seating, and amenities. The current status quo for city space is led by business and investors. The priority is to sufficiently house a large number of workers near to the central business district. But the result is that suburbs are akin to overnight and weekend hotels for workers to commute to and from. What if we created cities for each other to live and prosper rather than for the convenience of capital? We should seek suburbs which are communities and neighborhoods by containing retail, work, services, and recreational opportunities all alongside each other. This approach is sometimes known as the 20-minute city, as extensive travel beyond the neighborhood unit would be for rare occasions, not on a daily basis. This will promote lived social experience and community, but will require wide-reaching planning and zoning reform to permit different land usages closer together. The key policy is to demolish the concrete distinction between residential and non-residential land.
The war that gave the Western world its economic boom may have ended almost 100 years ago, but there remains a hidden war on the people, as land is bought up by private developers to make insufficient suburbs that minimally adhere to outdated planning standards, which inevitably force people to rely on cars for their everyday lives. If we are to avoid a future dictated by corporate greed, we must redirect power out of the private sector and back into the people's hands, nurturing communities built for livability and not for profit. Viva la revolution!